Hey and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to give you my thoughts and opinions on whether you should own and use a credit card within the UK, as well as what I believe to be the benefits and the downsides of using one. On my channel I talk about all things personal finance related, and I share information that I'm learning currently on my financial journey. If you get any value from my content whatsoever, please consider subscribing to the channel because it helps the information reach more people. The subject of credit cards, and in particular credit card debt, is close to my heart. It's the very reason that I started to learn about money and personal finance. It's the reason I started this YouTube channel, and it's the reason why I'm sharing content with you today. Over the last few decades, credit cards have become somewhat of a status symbol, and I'm certainly not immune to this. I distinctly remember about 8 years ago when I used to work as a cocktail bartender, there was a really rich guy that used to come in with his family and buy some food and drinks at the bar. He used to pay with an American Express black card, which is a very thick, heavy, invitation-only Amex card. For whatever reason, this impressed me massively. I bought into the idea that having some flashy credit card made you desirable in some way, and immediately checked online to see what the best looking credit card that I could get was. When in reality, all I was trying to do was look fancy to the person on the other end of a high street purchase. This outlook, a drop in income, and an interest in online gambling that was becoming unhealthy led me to racking up a credit card debt of over £5,000. The minimum payments alone were preventing me from enjoying my money and, most importantly, life. My own misuse of credit cards and my poor outlook on personal finance was the only cause of my financial problems, nothing else. I know I'm not the only person that's been burned by credit cards, and there certainly will be more. That being said, I think it's important to look at both sides of every argument and to see whether there's any merit in opposing views. You need to be objective and make sure that you don't get stuck in a narrow mindset. This is why I still do my best to look at both sides. So in this video I'm going to look at some data from a credit card market study that was conducted by the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, in July 2016, and I'll leave a link in the description box should you want to check that out. So let's start with looking at some of the benefits of credit cards first. Section 75 Protection. Section 75 of the Consumer Credit Act of 1974, popularly known just in short as Section 75, was a piece of legislation voted in by Parliament in the 1970s to make credit card companies jointly liable with retailers for larger purchases between £100 and £30,000. This means credit card companies are just as liable as the retailer or trader for any goods or services supplied, allowing you to also put a claim into the credit card company for any money that you may have lost. And by doing this, you don't have to reach a stalemate with the retailer or trader before you contact your credit card provider directly. So you can also make a claim to both the retailer and the credit card provider simultaneously, although you can't recover any losses from both. So this right is particularly useful if the retailer or trader has gone bust, or it doesn't respond to any letters or phone calls that you may be making to them. So Section 75 also applies to foreign transactions as well as goods bought online, or by telephone or by mail order for delivery to the UK from abroad. So Section 75's usefulness became ever more apparent in 2019 when travel agent Thomas Cook went bust. This left an estimated 160,000 British holidaymakers stranded abroad. So many people lost money if they hadn't purchased packages or flights on a credit card or had any travel insurance. So any flights over the value of £100 could have been claimed directly to the credit card companies, meaning the process of getting a refund would have been much quicker and not having to deal with Thomas Cook directly. So you can also earn reward points with certain credit cards. You just do your everyday spending with that card, and in return you get cash back or points that you can turn into vouchers or money off at various shops. You could earn hundreds of pounds worth of bonuses or cashbacks with some cards, however this obviously requires you to spend a lot of money. It sounds great, everyone loves something for nothing, but unless you're careful, cards will actually deliver nothing for something. So you might get hit with interest if you don't pay them in full every single month. And some cards even impose a minimum spend to get those rewards. So always read the fine print carefully before you decide to go and get a reward credit card. And the truth is, nobody gets rich from reward points. The actual percentage of rewards that you get versus what you spend is around 1%. Credit card companies use a simple psychological trick by rewarding you free stuff for something that you think you would never have done differently, when in reality you probably spent more than you would. So credit cards may increase your credit score, only slightly. So credit card balances do help with building your credit score. However, it only accounts for a really small percentage of how your credit score is calculated. The exact percentage isn't easily accessible to the public. However, we do know that types of credit only account for 10% of your calculated score. So I'd estimate it's probably going to be a little bit more than that. Most people that I talk to about this subject say that the reason they have a credit card is to boost their credit score. So even though it does help slightly, having other credit such as a mortgage or even a mobile phone contract adds to this calculation too. And any form of credit, aka money borrowed, will show whether you are responsible enough to repay the money that you've borrowed. And realistically, that's all that prospective lenders want to know. Boosting your credit rating isn't specific to credit cards like so many people believe. Check out my video on credit scores that I'll leave a link to above to go deeper into this subject. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the downsides. So you will spend more money. This for me, if there was only one reason to tell somebody not to have a credit card, would be it. Simply by using a credit card just to make purchases, you're more likely to spend money than if you're going to use debit card or cash. And this ties in really well with the previous point about rewards and spending money to get them. So one study done by Marketing Letters, who produce evidence-based research in America, showed that when people are told to make a purchase on a credit card rather than cash, they tend to spend more, up to 100% more. Part of the reason for this is based around a concept in marketing called friction. An example of friction would be when you go to make a purchase online, but it takes too many clicks to get to the point that you hand over your card details. There are too many opportunities for you to just give up and not buy the item. Companies invest a ton of money to make the process of buying items as frictionless as possible. Just think about that next time you buy something on Amazon. And the truth is, credit cards are frictionless. It now couldn't be easier to purchase items with a click or with contactless. One touch and the money isn't even yours. Another study conducted by Dun and Bradstreet in the US showed that when you pay using a credit card, it does not activate the pain sensors in your brain. It doesn't register in your brain that you've spent money or lost anything. When you make a purchase with cash, the trade is really obvious. You hand over money, you get an item. You do not get the money back. Whereas with a credit card, you hand over your card, you get an item, and then you get your card back too. So debit cards have a similar effect too, but studies show that it does actually activate the pain sensors slightly more than credit cards, but not as much as cash. The takeaway for me with this is that if you think you're going to beat the big credit card companies at their own game, you're wrong. Their entire job and industry is to sell you a credit card and push you to spend as much money as you can on it. You would not believe how much money is actually spent on marketing for credit card companies within the UK. So you could be forever in debt by using credit cards. If you were to rely on credit cards for an emergency or even just to use it every day, you're statistically highly likely to just pay the minimum payments on that balance, or at least not pay the full balance off as many people think they will. So according to the 2016 FCA credit card market study, only 28% of people pay their credit card balance in full every single month. Which means that 78% of people with credit cards in the UK are either paying the minimum payments or in between the minimum and the full balance. So many people, including me, convince themselves that they will pay off their card, or if not, they'll just juggle their cards to pay no interest on 0% interest. And this cycle can keep you with a balance on a credit card for an exceptionally long time. The minimum payment is set so that you barely touch the balance, yet repay interest to the lender. And seriously, you could have a reasonably small balance on your credit card and never pay it off just by paying the minimum payment. I'll link a calculator in the description box below for you to test this out for yourself. So credit cards can also give you a false sense of security. It can make you feel like you have a backup or a safety net or somewhere you can turn in case of an emergency. With the best intentions, people think that if their car were to break down and they were going to pay for those repairs with a credit card, they would somehow find money shortly afterwards to pay that balance off. If it were that simple, surely you would just have found the cash in the first place to pay for the repairs. The goal needs to be to cut out the middleman and direct your effort to building up an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months that completely removes that need for a credit card. This is a much more effective way of becoming self-insured. By doing this, when you need to pay for an emergency, you aren't relying on high interest credit card debt to fund it. And finally, credit cards allow you to live above your means. By having access to money that isn't yours, you are much more likely to purchase things you simply can't afford. The ease of access to this type of credit can spiral you into debt very easily, and I genuinely can speak from experience. When you make an impulse purchase on a credit card, you aren't thinking of future you that needs to pay that money back. I had to train myself to think about future me when making purchases in the now. That isn't to say that now I don't spend money on things I want, but I do my best to not make a purchase now that will prevent me from having enough money in the future for just the basics. You need to live on less than you earn, and if you're not in this habit, credit cards can cause you some serious issues. And on a final note about debt, in particular credit card debt, if you are struggling with debt and you can't afford the minimum payments or even feel like you just need some help, I would advise talking to somebody. It isn't often as bad as you think, and there's definitely a way out. So check out the National Debt-Line, Citizens Advice, and also Step Change. So to conclude, instead of relying on using a credit card when an unexpected payment arises, make sure you have an emergency fund set aside. I'm a big advocate of the Dave Ramsey structure. So if you have debt, you should get rid of that first and just have £1,000 set aside for small emergencies when you're becoming debt-free. Once you're out of debt, then you need to build up that fully funded emergency fund. Instead of justifying the use of credit cards by saying, I get loads of rewards, why not put your money to good use by investing it into something that will make you money in the future? I talk to a lot of people about this subject, and they think that most people can be sensible when it comes to credit cards. This is true. However, that doesn't mean that a lot of people that use them aren't worse off and that many are crippled by them. I view credit cards the same way that I view cigarettes. Yes, many people can smoke their entire life without dying from lung cancer, but that doesn't mean that the cigarette itself isn't bad and actually has no benefit to your health whatsoever. The credit card is the financial cigarette. I wholeheartedly believe you do not need a credit card to succeed with money, and that by not using them, you can improve your finances dramatically. And this comes from knowledge. Knowledge that is accessible to absolutely anybody, whether it comes from books, blogs, or YouTube channels, just like this. But the fact that you got this far means that you're looking for this information. So before you go, why not subscribe to the channel to get more information about personal finance?